Funkin Lullaby was slated to receive a huge version 2 update on Halloween of this year, the anniversary of the initial mod's release. Unfortunately, this week there was drama within the dev team that became public, and a lot of people have decided they no longer want to work on or associate with the mod. Multiple builds in varying levels of completion began circulating just 10 days before the planned release. Normally, I'm morally opposed to covering leaked content as it tends to be released under malicious circumstances, but this is different. This is a team of people putting their hands up and simply saying, I'm done. So, with all the respect in the world, I'd like to cover their hard work today. Here's 10 things about Funkin Lullaby version 2. Let's get into it. First thing players will note when booting up the leaked build is a gore warning, which offers the player the chance to opt out of violent scenes. This, of course, is a ruse, as selecting it plays a laughing sound and closes the mod. Gotcha. The next major difference is the updated start menu logo featuring Hypno and Missing No, and the slowly panning background of a forest. The main menu has received a bit of an upgrade, with line art of the characters and opponents in this mod, and a slowly moving, dark, glitchy, grainy background as opposed to the original black. There's also the addition of the Pokédex, which features classic Pokemon-styled entries of the mod's opponents after they've been faced. There's also a pretty unique credits section where developers of the mod are not only attributed to their part of the production, but also get to write a small quote and paragraph about their time working on the project. There are several changes to the original Hypno Week. The pendulum mechanic has returned, but now there's a visual indicator if the button is being pressed on time, a green stylized checkmark when pressed, and a red swirl when missed. Unfortunately, dialogue has been cut from this build, so we can infer that the story is the same from the initial mod. Boyfriend has gone missing, and it's up to girlfriend to locate her missing man. It becomes apparent that things are much more sinister than initially thought when Hypno approaches girlfriend and attempts to hypnotize her with a lullaby. With the sheer power of mental focus and a little stupidity, girlfriend withstands Hypno's influence, to which he steps on the gas in terms of psychic power and separates his body and head. Both Safety Lullaby and Left Unchecked have been remastered, and a third song has been added to the main week, Lost Cause. In Lost Cause, girlfriend is dragged to Hypno's lair where she finds boyfriend a bit worse for wear in the brain department and attempts to snap him out of hypnosis by singing the motifs of Pico and MILF from the base game, before being interrupted by Hypno's third and final form. A writhing mass of exposed organs and bones, and placed on top like a cherry on a sundae is Hypno's body. At the end of this gauntlet of a song, Hypno's head detaches itself from its body and flies at girlfriend for one last jump scare, presumably killing the Pokemon. Just like in Left Unchecked, Hypno's hand is held up during the song as if they're holding the pendulum, but likely don't due to the jitteriness of their animations. Completing songs now rewards the player with currency, which they can use to buy items that unlock more songs. The free play menu now acts as the mod's shop. The items in question relate to the creepypasta the song is based on. The guy who offers you the game before Monochrome in version 1 comes back, but as a shopkeeper, rendered in 3D and kept in the shadows for an eerie effect. He's not very polite and directly insults the player pretty frequently. The only free item in the shop is the cartridge for Pokemon Silver, and the shopkeeper will say, "Oh, now you want it? Make up your mind, you freak," implying it was once offered to you for free like in the previous version. The shopkeeper will also occasionally say, "Nobody's gonna come help you once you see me in different circumstances," perhaps alluding to a future face-off, although he does tell the player he doesn't rap. He'll also occasionally say, "No, you can't drink from my head. I know you see the handle, but I'm not a mug," likely referencing Cuphead. The next story mode cartridge is Lost Silver. We know that Monochrome was the only song from the pasta in the original Funkin Lullaby, but now there's 2 other songs that feature stories from Generation 2 Pokemon. The first song of the week is called Frostbite, a track based on the creepypasta Snow on Mount Silver. Snow on Mount Silver tells the story of a young man whose brother was driven insane by their cursed copy of Pokemon Silver. The game starts up on Mount Silver with a trainer named Blake, trudging through heavy falling snow. Despite attempts to leave, the game forces the player to continue up the mountain, as their party of Pokemon succumb to frostbite one by one. Eventually, the player is apprehended by Celebi, who uses Perish Song and makes him black out. When the character comes to, they're missing an eye, a leg, and an arm. They find themselves inside Mount Silver and slowly hobble their way to Red to initiate a fight. Red's Pokemon one by one can only struggle, then die from exposure. Red's final Pokemon is Pikachu, who uses Pain Split to take Blake's final Pokemon Typhlosion down with it. Funkin Lullaby uses this story as inspiration for mechanics in the song. Blake, referred to as Gold in-game, has a cold meter that when filled results in an instant game over. They must use Typhlosion's fire to keep them warm, but overuse causes the Pokemon to die and unable to heat up their trainer. The cold level also affects the amount of health drain done by Red. In the latter half of the song, Red sends out Frostbitten Pikachu and takes on a frostbitten form himself, despite in the story doing that after Typhlosion dies. Pikachu can now bite itself to damage Gold due to the aforementioned Pain Split. Regardless of winning, Gold still dies, likely leading to the events of Monochrome. Also, the visceral sounds heard at the end of this song are actually an unimplemented cutscene of Freakachu bursting out of Gold's chest. Holy crap. The next song in the Lost Silver week is Insomnia, a track against a faceless Silver and his sleeping Feraligatr. This track is based on a hidden route of a Pokemon Lost Silver fan game, where the player finds Silver and his Feraligatr, which immediately falls asleep in its first turn of combat and is instantly killed. Calling it a fan game is a bit misleading, however, as it's actually written by the original author of Lost Silver, who I would credit, but the story was submitted anonymously. In Funkin Lullaby, the mechanic of Insomnia is that the player must keep their accuracy above 90% or wake up the Feraligatr, resulting in an instant game over. Much like our opponent in Monochrome, Silver doesn't have a typical idle animation. He just stands there with a bit of line boil for a creepy effect. Oh yeah, speaking of Monochrome, Monochrome returns as the final song of the Lost Silver week, practically untouched from its initial version, but it's extended, giving the song double the runtime. In the second half of the now extended track, Gold's head detaches from his body, just like how he was just ahead near the end of Lost Silver, and now utilizes the unknowns to spell out no more. The song name at the top now jumbles the word monochrome for the remainder of the track. The mechanics like the distracting jump scare and having to translate the unknowns is still present. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but in the second half, letters can be small and pressed together, making it more difficult to translate in time. The third and final week of the mod is Missing No, which the player can unlock by pressing 7 on the main menu. Unfortunately for me, in the build that I have, it unlocked literally everything, which is likely just a way for developers to test out features before the release, which makes me think that the method of unlocking Missing No naturally just wasn't implemented yet. Selecting the glitchy cartridge doesn't just drop the player into the track, but actually sends them into the overworld of Pokemon Blue. The player finds himself in Cinnabar Island and can walk around as Boyfriend. Unfortunately, nothing can be interacted with except for the glitchy part of the eastern shore. The closer the player gets to the spot, the more the game seems to bug out, and stepping into it brings us to the newly remastered Missing No song. This is a reference to the final step of getting Missing No, where the player has to immediately fly from the Old Man tutorial to Cinnabar and surf up and down the eastern shore. Missing No still glitches the hit bar by moving the arrows around and switching the scroll direction, but never puts the arrows out of order. After Missing No, we're brought to probably the most anticipated song in the mod, Brimstone. Brimstone is based on the Buried Alive creepypasta, in which the writer claims that a Buryman script exists, which was the original boss for Lavender Town Tower before Marowak. This boss was designed to be unbeatable, using a Gengar, Muck, and then 2 white hands as its Pokemon. Upon defeat, the player would be buried with the creature, as it states, "Finally, fresh meat." In Funkin Lullaby, the player seems to be in combat just like the creepypasta, with the stage being introduced like combat, and a health bar and hit bar that reflects the Pokemon games. The scenery indicates that this stage takes place in Lavender Tower, just like the creepypasta. Initially, it's just a rap battle between Buried and Boyfriend before Buried sends out his first Pokemon, Gengar. Gengar then sings the motif of trainer battles from Gen 1, and Boyfriend throws a strange, glitchy-looking Pokeball. After a few moments, Missing No bursts out and teams up with Boyfriend in true Pokemon battle fashion. This is the first time in Funkin Lullaby that an opponent becomes an ally. Both Pokemon slide off screen, and the scene becomes green briefly, just like the look of classic Game Boy screens, before Muck joins the fray. The mechanic with Muck is that the screen can occasionally become obscured by sludge, making it difficult to see oncoming notes. White Hand then phases into the scene next to Muck to observe, and eventually takes over the scene by becoming Girlfriend in an attempt to unsettle Boyfriend. This obviously isn't Girlfriend, but just White Hand using Transform, but White Hand likely knows what she looks like because it can be seen briefly in the background during the first week. The story mode art used to represent the weeks are actual cartridges for Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon games, Pokemon Yellow, Silver, and Blue. Pokemon Yellow was chosen likely because Hypno's color scheme is yellow and white, Silver because the week is based on Lost Silver and snowing on Mount Silver, and Pokemon Blue was chosen for the final cartridge because the Buryman script apparently only works on Pokemon Blue. In place of the Nintendo logo, the word is Bim Bembo, narrowly avoiding a visit from the company's legal team. The free play song Bygone Purpose gives us a window into the events that made Hypno into what he is in the main story. This concept originally started as some art tweeted by BanBuds shortly after the release of Funkin Lullaby version 1, featuring a smaller Hypno looking off the end of a bridge and a crowd of people laughing, saying she jumped. The next image is a much larger Hypno looking over the same bridge, only much older, and in a stance that almost conveys sadness had he not been so intimidating. These two scenes are the basis of Bygone Purpose, with the first half of the song being a young Hypno singing lamenting over the side of the bridge, thinking about their lost trainer who in the game files is named Alexis. After a small flashback, we're treated to the second half of Bygone Purpose that features Alexis singing to the now grown Hypno before passing on to the other side. Hypno seems oblivious to her presence. Strangely enough, the mechanic of the song is that the notes seem to move at different speeds, which can easily make you trip up. Now you're probably thinking, oh, it's Fact 10, he hasn't even delved into the meat of it, and you'd be right. There's so much to unpack with this mod that I have to split the facts down the middle like a grilled cheese and make a second video. It is just around the corner, like literally my next video, so hit that sub button if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you then. Alright, thanks for watching. Until next time.